They say time heals all wounds. But whoever said that never had their own child rip open the scars you thought had long faded. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when it happened, the kind of morning where the world feels slow, still, almost kind. The sun poured through my kitchen window, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. I was halfway through a crossword puzzle when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was my daughter, Angela. I smiled, because hearing from her always made my day, or at least it used to. But the moment I picked up the call, I knew something was off. Her tone was different. Cold. Distant. Like a stranger pretending to sound familiar. "Mom," she said quickly, "I just wanted to let you know, we sold the beach house. And the truck, too." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her right. "You what?" "We sold them," she repeated, her voice firm, as if rehearsed. "It's too much for you to handle now, Mom. Edward and I already finalized everything. You'll thank us later." Before I could respond, she added, "Anyway, we're catching our flight to Europe tonight. I'll call when we settle in. Love you." And then, she hung up. No goodbye. No pause. Just silence. I stood there, phone in hand, staring at the wall as her words echoed through my head. Sold the beach house. Sold the truck. The house Robert and I built together after years of saving, dreaming, and scraping by. My late husband, Robert, had poured his heart into that place. Every nail, every beam, every laugh shared under that roof carried a piece of him. And now it was gone, sold off without my consent. The anger came slow, like a wave building at sea. I wanted to cry, scream, maybe even beg, but I didn't. Instead, I sat down at the table, took a long breath, and whispered to myself, "All right, Robert. I get it now. You were right about her." When Robert passed 6 months earlier, I was lost. Angela had stepped in, telling me she'd handle everything. I signed papers I barely read, thinking she was helping. I trusted her, because that's what mothers do. But in that moment, I realized I'd trusted the wrong person. That night, I couldn't sleep. The clock ticked louder than usual. The waves from the shore outside sounded almost angry. I sat up in bed, staring at the moonlight through the curtains, when I suddenly remembered something. A small, sealed envelope tucked away in Robert's drawer. The one he'd handed me 3 days before he died. He had said, "Antonia, don't open this unless something ever feels wrong." And that night, everything felt wrong. I got out of bed, walked to the dresser, and pulled out the envelope. It was still sealed, Robert's handwriting scrawled neatly across the front. My heart pounded as I sat down, hands trembling, and tore it open. Inside was a letter, and a stack of folded documents. I started reading, and what I discovered inside that envelope would change everything I thought I knew about my husband, and about my daughter. Because hidden in that letter was a secret my husband took to his grave, a secret that would turn my daughter's betrayal into something far more dangerous than I ever imagined. The letter began with Robert's familiar handwriting, strong, steady, and full of warmth. Even before I read the words, I could almost hear his voice, calm and loving, as if he were sitting right beside me again. "My dearest Antonia, if you're reading this, then I've already gone to rest. Please don't cry for me, love. Instead, promise me you'll stay strong. There are things I kept from you, not because I didn't trust you, but because I wanted to protect you from worry. Over the years, I invested in a few things quietly, land, shares, and one small business. They're all in your name. I wanted to make sure you'd be safe and comfortable, no matter what. But there's something else. Be careful who you let near these papers. Especially Angela. She's my daughter, but she's also Edward's wife. And Edward, well, there's something about that man I never could trust." My hands trembled as I turned the page. Beneath the letter were several documents, property deeds, bank statements, investment papers. My eyes widened as I flipped through them one by one. Robert hadn't just left me the beach house, he'd left me multiple properties. A small apartment complex, shares in a construction company, and land out west I'd never even heard of. I whispered to myself, Robert, what on earth did you do? It hit me then, Angela must have known about these. Or at least, Edward did. That's why she'd pushed me to sign those papers after the funeral. She hadn't been helping me, she'd been helping him. I sat there in the silence of the night, my chest tight with a mix of heartbreak and fury. I had trusted her. My only child. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. Robert's letter felt incomplete, like he'd written it in a hurry. I read it again and noticed a small line at the bottom of the last page. If anything ever feels off, contact Peterson. He knows what to do. Peterson. Mr. Frank Peterson, Robert's longtime lawyer and friend. I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral. I grabbed my coat, tucked the letter and documents into my purse, and headed out. When I arrived at his office, he looked genuinely surprised to see me. Mrs. Brooks. It's been a while. How have you been holding up? I've had better days, I said softly. I need to show you something. He gestured for me to sit as I laid the letter and documents on his desk. He read through them carefully, his brow furrowing with each page. Finally, he looked up at me. Antonia, your husband was smarter than most people knew. These are legitimate investments, and they're all under your name. You're wealthier than you realize. I blinked in disbelief. Wealthier? He nodded. Yes, ma'am. But, he pulled out one more document from the pile and frowned. This one concerns me. It was the power of attorney, the same one Angela had asked me to sign after Robert's death. Did you actually sign this? He asked. I shook my head. No. I remember refusing. I didn't want to. His expression darkened. Then this is forged. And if that's the case, it means Angela or her husband illegally transferred your assets. The room went quiet. I felt my heart sink, not from surprise, but from confirmation. The truth I'd been dreading was finally staring me in the face. But what I didn't know then, was that uncovering this forgery would be the first move in a dangerous game, one that my own daughter wasn't ready to stop playing. I sat in stunned silence, staring at the forged document on Mr. Peterson's desk. Even though I'd already suspected it, seeing it confirmed in black and white still hit me like a punch to the chest. She forged my signature? I asked quietly, though I already knew the answer. Mr. Peterson adjusted his glasses and nodded grimly. It's not your handwriting, Mrs. Brooks. The loops, the angles, someone tried to copy you, but it's not exact. I can have a handwriting expert verify it. I pressed my hand against my heart. My daughter. She let him do this. Or worse, she helped him. He paused, his tone softening. I've known Angela since she was a little girl. I'd like to believe she was manipulated. But this document, he tapped it lightly, this is a serious offense. It's a fraud. I swallowed hard. Can it be undone? Yes, he said firmly. But it'll take time. We'll have to file to reverse every transaction tied to this signature. It's a legal maze, but not impossible. Do it, I said without hesitation. I want everything back, every piece, every penny. Not out of greed, Mr. Peterson, but because that's what Robert wanted. He nodded. Understood. When I left his office, the city felt different. The wind was sharp, almost cleansing, like it was carrying away the last of my naivety. For the first time since Robert's death, I felt awake. I wasn't just an old widow anymore. I was a woman with something to fight for. That evening, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea, staring at the documents spread across the table. The paper smelled faintly of ink and dust, reminders of a life built in silence and trust. I thought of Angela. Her laughter as a child. Her teenage tantrums. The way she used to cling to me after nightmares. And now, the woman she'd become, colder, sharper, almost unrecognizable. How has love turned into this? My phone buzzed suddenly, snapping me from my thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. Heard you've been asking questions. Careful what you dig up. I froze. My heart skipped a beat as I read it again. No name, no context, just that. But I didn't need to guess who sent it. Edward. That man always had a way of showing up, even when he wasn't in the room. For a moment, fear crept in, the kind that squeezes your stomach until you can hardly breathe. But then something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to be scared anymore. I took a deep breath, walked to Robert's old study, and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. It was filled with handwritten notes, addresses, and contact numbers, the same one Robert used to keep track of his business dealings. As I flipped through the pages, one name caught my eye, E. Collins. Edward's name. Next to it, a single line in Robert's handwriting, "Never trust this man, not even with air." I couldn't help but smile. "Oh, Robert," I whispered, "you knew." I picked up the phone and called Mr. Peterson again. "It's me," I said. "If we're going to take back what's mine, we'll need to be careful. Edward's watching." He sighed. "Then we'll move quietly. Let's start with the beach house. I'll get the reversal filed by morning." "Thank you," I said. When I hung up, I looked toward the window. The ocean glimmered faintly in the moonlight, calm and endless, a strange comfort. Angela and Edward thought they'd outsmarted me. But what they didn't know was that I was just getting started. Because by the time they returned from Europe, the home they stole from me would already be mine again, and so would every secret they thought they'd buried. The following days passed in silence, the kind that hums beneath the surface, waiting to crack open. From the outside, everything looked normal. I watered my plants, greeted neighbors, and went for my morning walks. But inside, I was a storm in disguise. Mr. Peterson worked quickly. Within a week, he'd managed to freeze all accounts associated with that forged power of attorney. The process was slow, but every update from him felt like another piece of my life coming back. Still, I couldn't shake the thought of Angela. Was she a willing accomplice? Or had Edward wrapped her so tightly in his web that she couldn't tell right from wrong anymore? One afternoon, while I was sorting old letters in the study, my phone buzzed. It was Mr. Peterson again. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, his tone careful. "There's something you should know. We've confirmed the forgery, the handwriting and the signature. But it gets worse." I straightened. "Worse how?" "The notary who witnessed your signature doesn't exist. The entire document was processed through a fake legal firm Edward set up years ago." My blood ran cold. "So this was planned?" "Planned," he said gravely, "and executed perfectly, until now." I sank into Robert's old chair, gripping the phone. "Can we tie it back to him legally?" He hesitated. "Not yet. But we will. For now, we'll make sure your assets are protected. Every single one." After the call, I sat there for a long time, listening to the ticking of the clock. The truth was beginning to unfold, and it wasn't pretty. That night, I pulled out Robert's old photo album. There he was, smiling beside me on the porch of the beach house, sun in his eyes, hair gray at the temples. His expression said everything. We built this together. I touched the photo gently. "Don't worry, Robert," I whispered. "I'll finish what you started." The next morning, Mr. Peterson called again, this time with good news. "The beach house sale has been legally reversed," he said. "The deed's back in your name. Congratulations, Mrs. Brooks." I closed my eyes and smiled for the first time in weeks. "Thank you," I said softly. "That house means more than I can explain." He chuckled. I think Robert already did. When I hung up, I sat back in my chair and let out a long breath. The beach house was mine again. Piece by piece, I was reclaiming my life, and my dignity. But that sense of relief didn't last long. That evening, I received an email. The sender's name was blocked, but the subject line made my heart skip. "You should have stayed quiet." I opened it, a single message, no greeting, no signature. You think you've won, old lady? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. It could have been a bluff, but something about the phrasing, the confidence, told me otherwise. Edward was watching. I closed my laptop, locked the doors, and drew the curtains. For the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my property, I was fighting for my safety. I poured myself a small glass of whiskey, Robert's favorite, and raised it to the empty room. You picked the wrong woman to mess with, Edward, I muttered. The house was quiet, but I could almost hear Robert's voice in the wind, that's my girl. But just when I thought I had everything under control, one unexpected visitor would arrive at my doorstep, and turn my quiet plan for justice into a dangerous game of survival. The next morning started like any other, coffee brewing, birds chirping, the quiet rhythm of a house pretending to be peaceful. But beneath that calm, something felt off. I couldn't shake the chill that had settled in me since that email. I checked the locks twice, even pulled the curtains tighter than usual. Still, I couldn't ignore the prickling sense that I wasn't alone. Around noon, a knock came at the door. Sharp. Firm. 3 times. My heart jumped. I hesitated for a moment before peeking through the window. A man stood on my porch, tall, wearing a dark coat and a cap pulled low. His face was half hidden in the shadow. I considered not opening the door, but something about the way he stood, still and patient, made me feel he wasn't there to harm me. I cracked it open just an inch. Can I help you? He removed his cap, revealing kind eyes lined with age and exhaustion. Mrs. Brooks? He asked. Yes? He took a deep breath. My name's David Lorne. I worked with your son-in-law, Edward. The air in my lungs turned heavy. If you're here to defend him, you're wasting your time. He shook his head quickly. No, ma'am. I'm here because you're in danger, and so is your daughter. That made me freeze. Explain yourself. He looked around nervously, lowering his voice. Edward wasn't just running a scam business. He was working with people, dangerous people. They funded his fake companies, helped him move stolen money offshore. When he disappeared, he took their money with him. Now, they think your family has it. I felt my heart pound harder. But we don't. I don't even know where he is. I know, David said. But they don't care about the truth. They want payback. They've been watching this house for weeks. My knees nearly gave out. I leaned against the doorframe for balance. Watching me? Yes, he said grimly. And Edward isn't the only one they're after. They're using you to draw him out. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my breath. Why are you telling me this? David looked at me with guilt written all over his face. Because I used to be part of it. I handled some of his accounts. I didn't know how deep it went, until people started disappearing. My voice was barely above a whisper. What do you expect me to do? Pack a small bag, he said. Lay low for a few days. I'll talk to the detective handling Edward's case. They can put you under watch until this blows over. I studied him carefully. There was fear in his eyes, but also sincerity. He wasn't lying, he looked like a man who'd already seen too much. After a long silence, I nodded. All right. But if anything happens to my daughter. He raised a hand. I'll make sure she's safe. That's why I came. Before I could ask more, he stepped off the porch and walked toward his car. He paused at the end of the driveway and looked back. Mrs. Brooks, he said, if anyone else shows up asking about Edward, don't answer the door. And then he was gone. I locked the door behind him and pressed my back against it, my heart racing. The reality of it all finally sank in. This wasn't just about money or betrayal anymore. This was about survival. But as night fell and the wind howled through the trees, I realized David's warning had come too late, because someone else was already watching from across the street. That night, I barely slept. David's warning echoed in my mind like an old record on repeat. They've been watching this house. I kept the lights off and the curtains drawn, listening to every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the glass. The quiet, once comforting, now felt like an enemy hiding something just out of sight. By midnight, I'd finally drifted into a light sleep, until a faint noise jolted me awake. A click. Then a slow creak. The sound of the back door. My pulse thundered in my ears. I sat up, barely breathing, straining to listen. There it was again, footsteps, soft but deliberate, moving across the kitchen floor.
For a moment, I thought I was imagining it. But then a shadow passed under the doorframe, and I knew. Someone was inside my house. I reached for the drawer of my nightstand and pulled out Robert's old revolver. The cold metal felt both foreign and familiar in my trembling hands. "All right," I whispered to myself. "You've lived through worse." I crept toward the hallway, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might give me away. From where I stood, I could see a faint beam of light moving across the kitchen. A flashlight. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. They were searching. Then I heard a man's voice, low and impatient. "Check the study. The papers are supposed to be there." Papers. They were looking for Robert's documents. I stayed hidden near the doorway, my back against the wall, and dialed 911 as quietly as I could. My voice trembled as I whispered, "This is Antonia Brooks. Someone's in my home. Please." Before I could finish, the floor creaked beneath my foot. The light snapped toward me. "Who's there?" the man shouted. I ducked behind the hallway wall just as something crashed, maybe a lamp, and ran. My bare feet slid against the hardwood as I made for the laundry room. I locked the door, my hands shaking uncontrollably. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then, footsteps. Heavy, closing in. "Mrs. Brooks," a voice drawled from the other side of the door. "We don't want to hurt you. We just need the papers." I pressed my back against the door, clutching the revolver. "Get out of my house." He laughed, a low, chilling sound. "You're a tough one, huh? Shame Edward didn't tell you the whole truth." The mention of Edward's name sent a cold wave through me. "He's behind this, isn't he?" "Let's just say," the man said, "he made promises to people. And you're holding what he didn't deliver." Then, silence. I held my breath. No footsteps, no voices. Just the steady tick of the clock down the hall. When the faint sound of sirens broke through the night air, I finally exhaled. They were gone before the police arrived. No sign of forced entry, no fingerprints, just muddy boot prints by the back door. The officers were kind, but I could tell they thought I was just a frightened old woman. "We'll patrol the area tonight," one of them said. "Try to get some rest, ma'am." Rest. The word almost made me laugh. When they left, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me, the one Robert used to sit in every morning. I poured myself a cup of cold coffee and whispered, "They want the papers, Robert. But I'll die before I give them up." Outside, the wind rattled the windows again. But this time, I knew it wasn't just the wind. Someone was still out there. Watching. Waiting. And by sunrise, I'd realized the break-in wasn't random at all. It was a warning. The next one wouldn't come for papers. It would come for me. I barely saw daylight that morning. The police had left around 4, but sleep never came. I just sat at the table, watching the horizon turn from black to gray to gold. My body was still, but my mind, it was racing. I kept hearing the man's voice in my head, the way he'd said Edward's name, the way he'd laughed. They weren't random thieves. They were sent. By the time the sun was up, I'd made a decision. I wasn't waiting around for another knock in the night. I needed answers. I called Detective Harris, the one who had handled Edward's financial case before he disappeared. He picked up on the second ring. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, his tone tight. "Are you all right?" "Someone broke into my house last night," I said flatly. "They were looking for Robert's documents, and they knew Edward's name." He exhaled heavily. "That confirms our suspicions. We've been tracking a few of Edward's old associates, people with criminal records. They might believe he left something valuable behind. Well, they're not wrong, I admitted. But they're not getting it. Mrs. Brooks, he said firmly, please don't try to handle this alone. Stay inside. Keep your doors locked. I'll send an officer to keep watch for the next few nights. I wanted to argue, but I didn't. I just thanked him and hung up. Later that afternoon, as I was gathering my things to secure Robert's papers, I heard a knock at the door again. This time, it was soft, hesitant. I froze, then peered through the window. Angela. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I opened the door cautiously. Angela? What are you doing here? She didn't speak right away. She just burst into tears and threw her arms around me. Mom, she sobbed. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know what Edward was really doing. I held her for a moment, feeling her body shake against mine. What's happened? I asked. She pulled back, wiping her tears. He's gone, Mom. He left me. His office, our apartment. Everything's cleaned out. The police came by, asking questions about stolen money and fake accounts. I didn't know where else to go. I guided her inside, sat her down at the kitchen table. You're safe here, I said. But Angela, you need to understand, this isn't over. His mess has followed us. She looked confused. What do you mean? Someone broke in last night. They were looking for something Edward promised them. Her eyes widened in shock. What? Here. I nodded. They mentioned him by name. They think whatever he stole is hidden with me. Angela buried her face in her hands. Oh my God, Mom. I've ruined everything. I placed a hand on hers. No. You made mistakes, but so did I. I trusted too much. We're not victims anymore, Angela. We're going to end this. She looked up, trembling. How? By finding out exactly what Edward was hiding, I said firmly. And making sure whoever's after it never gets it.
That night, Angela slept in the guest room. I sat by the window, watching the same streetlight flicker outside. Somewhere out there, someone was still watching. But this time I wasn't alone. I looked toward the closed guest room door and whispered to myself, you took my house, my trust, and my peace, Edward, but you won't take my daughter again. The clock ticked softly in the background. And then, a phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Mrs. Brooks, a voice whispered. He knows she's with you. And before I could respond, the line went dead, leaving me with one terrifying thought. Edward wasn't running anymore, he was coming back. The next morning, the air felt heavier, like the world itself was holding its breath. Angela sat at the table with a mug of untouched coffee, her hands trembling slightly. She hadn't said much since I told her about the phone call. Neither had I. Some silences speak louder than words. Around noon, she broke it. Mom, she said softly, what if that call was a bluff? What if Edward really is gone? I looked up from the papers scattered across the table. Do you really believe that? Her eyes darted away. I don't know. I want to. Before I could answer, a car engine rumbled outside. I glanced through the window, a black SUV parked across the street. The same kind David had driven, but this one had tinted windows. My stomach tightened. Angela, I said quietly, go upstairs. Why? Who is it? Just go. She hesitated, then nodded and slipped out of sight. I stood by the window, heart pounding, as the driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out, sharp suit, dark glasses, the kind of presence that fills the air before he even speaks. He didn't approach right away. He just stood there, looking at my house. Then, as if sensing me watching, he slowly removed his glasses. It was Edward. I froze. For a moment, everything around me went quiet, the clock, the birds outside, even my own breathing. He looked older, thinner. His once slick hair was graying at the edges. But his smile, that same arrogant smirk, still lingered on his face. I stepped outside before fear could talk me out of it. "What do you want, Edward?" I called out. He tilted his head, calm as ever. Now, Antonia, is that any way to greet family? You stopped being family the moment you stole from us." He sighed, almost theatrically. "You make it sound so cruel. I was just borrowing what was already mine. You forged my signature. You sold my house. You used my daughter." He smirked. "And yet, here I am, not in handcuffs, not in a grave. Tell me, who really lost?" Anger boiled in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "What do you want?" He took a step closer. "The papers Robert left. You have them." "I know you do." My heart skipped. "You're not getting anything." He laughed quietly. "You think you can protect them? Protect Angela? You have no idea who's after me. These people don't forgive Antonia. They don't stop. I'm your only chance to make this go away." I folded my arms. "You're my problem, not my protection." His expression hardened. "Then you've just made a very big mistake." Before I could respond, the sound of a car door slamming echoed from down the street, a police cruiser pulling up. Edward's smile flickered. Detective Harris stepped out, eyes locked on him. "Mr. Collins. We've been expecting you." For the first time, I saw something new in Edward's face, not arrogance. Fear. He backed away slowly, muttering, "This isn't over." Then he slipped into his SUV and sped off, tires screeching. The detective ran to me. "Mrs. Brooks, are you all right?" I nodded, though my hands were shaking. "He was here. He knows about the papers." Harris's jaw tightened. "Then it's time we end this for good. Stay inside. We're closing in on him." When he left, I stood on the porch staring down the empty street, the echo of Edward's words haunting me. This isn't over. No, it wasn't. Not even close. Because by nightfall, Edward would prove just how desperate he'd become, and the next time we met, only one of us would walk away unbroken. That night, I didn't bother trying to sleep. I knew Edward wouldn't just vanish quietly. He was cornered, and a cornered man is the most dangerous kind. Angela stayed upstairs, refusing to leave my side. She was frightened, and I couldn't blame her. The man she once called her husband had become something unrecognizable, a ghost with teeth. Around midnight, the power went out. The entire house sank into darkness. The refrigerator stopped humming, the clock stopped ticking, and the silence that followed was deafening. "Mom?" Angela's shaky voice called from upstairs. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "Stay where you are." But my stomach twisted. Power outages don't just happen right after you've been threatened. I grabbed the flashlight from the drawer and moved toward the living room. Outside, through the window, I could see faint movement, the glint of something metallic in the moonlight. Then came the unmistakable sound of glass breaking. I spun toward the noise, the kitchen window. Someone was climbing in. "Angela!" I shouted. "Lock your door now." My hands shook as I reached for Robert's old revolver, the one I'd sworn I'd never have to use. But tonight wasn't about pride, it was about survival. The beam of my flashlight caught the shadow of a man stepping through the broken window. It was him. Edward. He looked wilder than before, eyes bloodshot, face streaked with sweat and dirt. His expensive suit was torn, his confidence replaced by desperation. "Antonia," he said, panting, "we don't have time. They're coming. They'll kill all of us if you don't give me those papers." I aimed the flashlight at him, keeping the gun steady. "You already sold your soul, Edward. You think I'd save it for you?" "You don't understand," he snapped. "This isn't about me anymore. They think you have the money now. They won't stop. You have no idea what these people are capable of." His voice trembled, not with pity, but with fear. Genuine fear. I held my ground. And whose fault is that? You brought them here. He took a step forward. Antonia, please. I can fix this. Just give me the documents. Stay where you are. Please. The sound of distant sirens cut through the night, growing louder. Edward's head snapped toward the window. You called them? They called me, I said coldly. Detective Harris is done playing games with you. He cursed under his breath and turned toward the back door. I aimed the gun higher. Don't move, Edward. He hesitated, hands shaking, eyes wild. If I go down, we all go down with me. The sirens got louder, flashing red and blue lights now painting the walls. For a split second, he looked like he might surrender. Then, like a cornered animal, he lunged. I fired. The shot echoed through the house, deafening and final. Edward froze, not hit, but startled. The bullet had lodged into the doorframe just inches from his hand. He looked at me with something almost like respect, then bolted out the back door into the night, disappearing into the woods as police cars screeched into the driveway. Angela ran downstairs, tears in her eyes. Mom. Are you okay? I nodded, my hand still shaking. Yes, sweetheart. It's over. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Because men like Edward never really disappear, they just wait for the next move. And I had a terrible feeling his next move would be worse than any before. Because before dawn, a single call would come through, not from the police, not from Edward, but from someone who claimed to have Robert's missing file, and a truth I wasn't ready to hear. The house still smelled like gunpowder when dawn broke. Angela was asleep on the couch, exhausted from crying, while I sat in the same chair I'd occupied for hours, watching the shadows move across the floor. My mind wouldn't rest. The sound of the gunshot, Edward's wild eyes, the fear in his voice, none of it made sense. Why would a man like him, who'd betrayed everyone, suddenly act as if he were the victim? That question was still circling in my mind when the phone rang. The screen showed an unknown number again. My pulse jumped, but I answered. Mrs. Brooks, a man's voice said. It wasn't Edward. Calm, older, professional. My name's Agent Nolan. I'm with the Bureau. I think we need to talk. I sat up straighter. The Bureau? Yes, ma'am. Federal investigations have been following a series of offshore accounts connected to your late husband, Robert Brooks. I froze. My husband? Yes, he continued carefully. It appears Mr. Brooks was running an unregistered investment trust in his final years. We believe your son-in-law Edward used those old accounts to launder money for outside partners. That's why they're after you. They think you still have access to Robert's original files. I felt my throat tighten. You're saying Robert was involved in this? Not willingly, Nolan said. From what we can tell, he discovered the fraud long before his death. He tried to pull out, but Edward was already too deep. There's a file he left behind, documentation that could prove everything. We believe that file is hidden in your home. My heart started pounding again. I thought of Robert's old study, of the drawers I'd never fully sorted through since he passed. If I find it? Do not hand it to anyone except me, Nolan said firmly. Edward's people are still watching. We'll send protection immediately. When he hung up, I sat still for a moment, trying to process it all. Robert hadn't just been a victim of Edward's greed, he'd been the one who discovered the truth. He'd tried to stop it. And that meant somewhere, in this house, was the key to everything. I moved quietly through the study, sunlight streaking across the old wooden desk. My fingers brushed over familiar things, the photo frame, his fountain pen, the dusty ledgers. Then I remembered something. A false panel behind the bottom drawer. Robert had shown it to me years ago, jokingly calling it his secret banker's box. I pulled the drawer all the way out and reached behind it. My fingers hit something, a slim envelope wrapped in plastic. My breath caught. Inside were documents, transaction lists, signatures, offshore routing numbers, and a single note in Robert's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means Edward's greed finally caught up with him. Protect Angela. Tell the truth. And don't trust anyone who finds you first. My hand shook. The words blurred in front of my eyes. I sat back slowly, clutching the letter to my chest. "Oh, Robert," I whispered. "You were protecting us all along." Just then, I heard Angela stir behind me. "Mom," she said groggily. "What's that?" Before I could answer, the phone rang again, same unknown number. I picked it up. "Mrs. Brooks," the voice said softly. "This isn't Agent Nolan. And if you want to live, don't give that file to anyone." The line went dead. The blood drained from my face. I turned to Angela, my voice barely a whisper. "Pack your things, sweetheart. We're leaving. Now." Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying: the file that could save us might also be the reason we'd never make it out alive. I didn't waste a second after that call. The fear in that voice, calm, calculated, and chilling, told me everything I needed to know. There wasn't just one side hunting that file. There were two. "Mom, what's going on?" Angela asked as I shoved documents into a small bag. "Get your coat," I said firmly. "We're leaving before anyone else shows up." "But where are we going?" "To the only place left that feels safe," I said. "The beach house." Her eyes widened. "The one you just got back?" I nodded. "Exactly. No one knows it's ours again." We drove in silence for hours, the old sedan cutting through winding backroads as rain began to fall. Angela stared out the window, lost in her thoughts. I could tell she wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but fear kept her quiet. When we finally reached the coast, the familiar sight of the ocean brought an ache to my chest. Robert and I had built that place together, plank by plank, long before life got complicated. It felt strange, coming back to it now, not for peace, but for survival. Inside, the air smelled of salt and old wood. I locked the doors, drew the curtains, and checked the windows twice. Only then did I allow myself to breathe. Angela sank onto the couch, her voice trembling. "Mom, do you really think Edward would come here?" I shook my head. "No. But the people he betrayed might." She covered her face with her hands. "This is all my fault. I should have seen who he really was." I sat beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "No, sweetheart. Evil doesn't walk into your life wearing horns. It comes dressed in love, in trust, in familiarity. You saw what he wanted you to see. We all did." Her tears fell quietly, and for a moment, we just sat there, mother and daughter, broken by the same man but bound by something stronger. Then, a sound outside. Gravel crunching. Tires. I moved to the window and peeked out. A black SUV. Again. My heart stopped. Before I could react, there was a knock at the door. Slow. Measured. Angela gripped my arm. "Mom, don't." I whispered, "Stay behind me." I opened the door just a crack, enough to see a familiar face. Detective Harris. He raised a badge. "Mrs. Brooks." We traced Edward's location. "He's dead." The words hit me like a wave. "What?" "He was found about 20 miles from here," Harris said grimly. "Car wreck. Looked like he was being chased. We found fake IDs, burned documents, and this." He handed me a photograph. It was Edward, standing beside a man I'd never seen before. Sharp suit, cold eyes. "Who's that?" I asked. "His partner," Harris said. "The man who funded everything. He's still out there. And he's looking for you." My breath caught. "So, it isn't over." "Not yet," he said. "But it will be. Hand me the file, Mrs. Brooks." We'll finish this. I hesitated. Robert's words echoed in my mind, don't trust anyone who finds you first. And I realized, Harris hadn't called ahead. He'd just shown up. I stepped back slowly. If you're really here to protect us, detective, you'll wait outside until backup arrives. His expression hardened. Antonia, please don't make this harder. That was all I needed to hear. I slammed the door shut and locked it. Outside, his voice turned cold. You just made a mistake, Mrs. Brooks. Angela grabbed my hand. Mom, what are we going to do? I looked toward the sea, waves crashing against the rocks, fierce and endless. We're going to survive, I said softly. And when this storm passes, we'll tell the truth, no matter who it destroys. I took Robert's file, sealed it in a waterproof bag, and buried it beneath the old oak by the cliff, the place where he and I once carved our initials. By the time the real police arrived, the SUV was gone. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd faced greed, betrayal, and death, and I was still standing. Because sometimes, life doesn't give you happy endings, it gives you survival. And that, I've learned, is the truest victory of all. You know, sometimes life doesn't hand you justice wrapped in ribbons and promises. Sometimes, it hands you lessons, carved in heartbreak, betrayal, and courage. Antonia Brooks wasn't a hero in shining armor. She was a woman who refused to be broken, even when the people she loved tried to destroy her. She lost her peace, her trust, but not her strength. And that strength? It became her weapon. Because at the end of it all, survival isn't weakness. It's proof that even the quietest hearts can outlast the loudest storms. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel, think, or remember someone you love, take a second to show your support. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who believes in second chances, and don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable tales like this one. There are more stories waiting to be told, stories of love, lies, and the hidden battles we all fight behind closed doors. This was Granny's Untold Stories. Until next time, remember, strength doesn't always roar, sometimes, it whispers, I'm still here.